What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Two Bucks Sports Podcast, coming to you with some heavy hearts tonight. Our beloved Memphis Grizzlies season is over. It was ended the other night in tragic fashion. Lots of moving parts after the end of the season. And so tonight, Uncle Buck and I are going to do a deep dive on our beloved Memphis Grizzlies. And so with that, I'm going to welcome him into the podcast. Uncle Buck, thanks for being here tonight, sir.
What's up, Buckets? It's glad. I'm glad that it's Wednesday, and I'm glad that I'm here to do another podcast with you. It is truly one of the highlights of my week every week. It's something I look forward to. Quick question for you. As you know, we talked about, you just introed the Grizzlies ended their season in Game 6 in Los Angeles on Friday night. So my just quick question for you, if you were to lose and your season is over, would you rather get blown out by 40 or lose a close one?
That's hard. That's tough, man. Because I honestly, I'd rather lose a close one. I'd rather get my heart broke that way, because losing by 40 is embarrassing, especially when I poke bears, like all the backstory to it. I would rather lose a close one, know that we were competitive and in it. I'm not about getting blown out.
Yeah, I would rather lose by 40.
No way.
And I'm talking about just in general. Like, you can take this year as the exception if you want to. You know, maybe I would have rather not gotten beat this year because of all the antics and the talk by the world famous WWE wrestler Dillon Brooks. But just in general, when it comes to processing a loss and grieving the end of the season, that got started pretty early in that game. You know, we've lost games in dramatic fashions that end the season before. But looking back on it in 10 years, when you talk about the 22-23 Memphis Grizzlies season, you're not going to think about Game 6 in Los Angeles. Yeah. You know, just the same way you don't think about Game 6 against Oklahoma City when Zach Randolph punched Steven Adams.
Oh, I think about that one a lot.
I'm sorry. You don't think about Game 7 of that series. You think about Game 6, you know. For me, other points of that series will stick out more than the 40-point loss on Friday night.
Nah, man, I think the 35-9 first quarter really stings. The 40-point loss to the Lakers, who just I cannot stand.
Game 4 was a chance to get it to 2-2 and make a best out of 3 series, and you give up. You take the lead with 6 seconds to go. Yeah. You're up by 7 with 2 minutes to go. You're up by 2 with 6 seconds to go, and LeBron ties it. I mean, that's the one that I'll remember.
Yeah.
So that was just my quick question. I know you've got some things you want to get to, so I don't want to hold us here. But I was genuinely curious, what is the best way to cleanse your palate? Because the palate got cleansed pretty quick for me. Like, I was able to put a pin in the season a lot easier after a 40-point loss, knowing that, I mean, you can't really say anything other than they were better than us.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get to it here in a little bit. Like you said, we talk about some of the Memphis Grizzlies as we get into the end of the year and player evaluation, but we'll talk about that in a minute. But first, speaking of, one of the biggest happenings, and we'll just kind of lead right off, is the departure of the future WWE or Shanghai Shark superstar, Dillon Brooks, who has left the Memphis Grizzlies in very dramatic fashion. And so we'll deep dive in on it in just a little bit. But those of you know, Shames dropped a bomb, got a Shams bomb, that Dillon is under no circumstances coming back to the Memphis Grizzlies. And we'll get our thoughts on the way that was handled or worded and what we think actually happened. But it got me thinking, Drew, he was our villain, right? He was our bad boy. He was our heel, if you will, much like you would see in WWE, WWF for those of us a little bit older, and in Hollywood as well. So with our villain being gone now, obviously on to greener pastures, whatever those may be, and God, I hope he ends up in the East, because if he comes back to Memphis, that's going to be ugly. But it got me thinking, who would you say is your favorite or couple favorite Hollywood villains? If you had to list some of your favorite ones, who would they be and why?
Well, the first one that popped in my head is because the Batman, the 3 Batman movies that came out when I was in high school, Batman Begins, The Dark Knight, Dark Knight Rises, those are the pinnacle of Batman movies, in my opinion. I was too young for the Jack Nicklaus and the what's his name,
Yeah, George Clooney, Val Kilmer, Michael Keaton, which
Yeah,
Michael
Michael
Keaton's the
Keaton.
second best Batman of all time.
So I was too young really for those, but to me, the two best villains in comic books are the Joker, Heath Ledger's Joker, and Bane from Dark Knight Rises.
Absolutely.
And I'm a big comic book movie fan. I am not the full nerd. You know, I'm the guy that probably comic book lovers hate the most because I love the movies and never read the comics. But Thanos is up there, you know. And so yeah, those are probably my favorite. TV show wise, I love Breaking Bad. And so if you want to call Walter White, aka Heisenberg, a villain,
the anti-hero, if you will.
Right. Yeah, the anti-hero. He's up there. So that's mine. Do you have any that just come off the top of your head?
Yeah, so you know, obviously thought about Bane and the Joker, and you know, those were some of the first ones that come to my mind. But I had a couple off the beaten path. You know, for some of our older listeners, Hannibal Lecter was a great villain back in the day.
Silence of the Lambs.
Silence of the Lambs. Anthony Hopkins did a great job there. For me, one of my all-time favorite movies is Gladiator with Russell Crowe, and Joaquin Phoenix as Commodus was a phenomenal. But I hated him so much growing up watching that movie. Exactly, with the thumb, man. Like, just what an evil dude, and then stabs Russell Crowe before their fight to even the playing field. Just he was an awesome heel. Yeah, all of these people are much better heels than Dillon Brooks. Yeah. I agree. Because Dillon, man, we'll get into it in a minute, but Dillon had some moments, and there were times where he would frustrate you because you'd like him, and then you'd hate him the next game. And these guys were true heels, and you hated him from the jump. You know, Thanos was never a good guy. Commodus was never a good guy. Hannibal Lecter was out there eating people. You know, honorable mentions of for our Star Wars fans out there. You got Darth Vader is obviously an all-time villain.
Shoot. Hans Gruber. It's an all-time diehard. Anthony Rickman.
Hans Gruber.
Alan Rickman. Yeah.
Yep. Voldemort from Harry Potter. We've had
also Alan Rickman.
Oh yeah, exactly.
No, I'm sorry. He was Snape. I'm off my Harry Potter game tonight.
But yeah, I mean, obviously some great villains. Loki is another one in some of the Marvel universes. It's a good villain.
He's you know what? He is a good comparison to Dillon Brooks because day to day, movie to movie, he may be bad or he may be awesome.
Yeah.
You know, he may have a soul and play as a team, or he may attack the world with an army of aliens.
That's it. You never know. He's hot and cold, man.
Yeah, he is. There is no in between, and you never know what it's going to be day to day.
Yeah.
Maybe we save the world and stab his brother in the back the next day.
In the very next movie. Maybe we get to our Grizzlies talk here in a little bit. We'll see if we can make some comparisons with the Grizz players and Marvel characters. That might be fun.
Ooh.
All right. So, just kind of warming ourselves up with that talk. Let's get into what was the NFL draft. A lot of big happenings opening night. There's some really cool moments, some big trades. It started off like the Carolina Panthers did not overthink it. Drafting Bryce Young was the right move. He's the best quarterback in the draft. It filled their need that they needed at the quarterback position, and it was the smart pick. I mean, they didn't overthink it. They picked the best player at number 1.
Yeah, they did, and it's the player that I said all football season, or as long as that we were recording this podcast, that I would take number 1. The other guys may have more upside, but at the number 1 pick, you've got to avoid downside, and he's also got just as much upside as the other ones. And so, yeah, they didn't overthink it. Unfortunately for Rebel fans, that probably doesn't mean anything good for Matt Corral, who was drafted there last year. Yeah, you can roll your eyes if you want to. He was an absolute legend at Ole Miss. He was incredible.
No doubt now, but
okay, so quit rolling your eyes.
He was not next in line to play in Carolina.
Yes, he was. There were 2 quarterbacks there.
Was he though? I mean, theoretically, he was.
I'm not going to say he's next in line as the second coming, but he was the backup.
I mean theoretically, yeah, by proxy.
No, that's not theoretically. That's a fact.
He was not going to see a single minute next year. They were going to bring in somebody.
Okay, you can speculate if you want to, but they did draft him last year. And it really came with an extra kick to the stomach because Matt Corral then gave up his number to Bryce Young.
Mm-hmm.
And so Bryce Young will wear number 9, and Matt Corral will go back to his college number of number 2. And so he is squarely third string because they did bring in Andy Dalton this year. And so, no, I didn't have any high aspirations of Matt Corral starting a game this year. But as you see with teams every single year, you get down to your second and third string guys, and a lot of times they make the most out of it. Look at PJ Walker for that very team.
Yeah.
You know, he was a XFL guy who got signed to a roster, and before you knew it, because of injuries, he got his shot and he made the most of it.
Played well.
And so that's all I want from Matt. I know he was a 4th round pick. He fell, but I know the guy that I watched and the heart that he's got and the toughness that he's got and the attitude. He'll make somebody happy one day if he gets a shot. And that's all I want. I want him to be somewhere where he gets a shot.
Well, it won't be next year because that belongs to Bryce Young out of the University of Alabama.
No, barring injury, I
right.
mean, you can't expect him to get a real shot.
No.
You know?
Yeah, and so, yep. So first overall went, and then number 2 went right as expected. The Texans took a quarterback with C.J. Stroud.
Was that expected?
Well, they were going to take a quarterback. They needed a quarterback, man. Davis Mills is not the answer out there.
They did an incredible job of masking it, though, because all the week of the draft, they were defensive line heavy. You know, it was Will Anderson or Tyree Wilson. That's all I saw the week of the draft. And they took C.J. Stroud. And credit, I saw this on Daniel Jeremiah, NFL Network's guy. On his last mock draft, he picked it. He picked Bryce Young 1, C.J. Stroud 2, and he picked the Texans trading up to 3.
I saw that.
Will Anderson.
I saw that, but even on this podcast last week when I was reading off the mock draft, they had C.J. Stroud going 2nd overall on ESPN and CBS to the Texans. The surprise was D'Amico and them giving up a fair amount to trade back up and get Will Anderson, but you know, D'Amico Ryans, former All-American in Alabama, Will Anderson, former All-American in Alabama, and those 2 guys are going to be impact players next year for the Houston Texans to make them a lot better. Right off the jump.
Did. I really did. And so 4 went with a surprise at quarterback.
Yep.
Props to the Indianapolis Colts. They've got a new head coach, a new GM, and they leaked out Will Levis for weeks. Will Levis isn't getting past 4. Will Levis isn't getting past 4, only to take Anthony Richardson from Florida, which was a stunner. And for Patrick Jones, our buddy and massive Colts fan, it was like he won the dang lottery that they went with Richardson over Will Levis.
Yeah. Obviously he's got the most potential. He's got the most upside. He's very raw. He's very unpolished. He's got a lot of things to work on, but if he can figure it out, keep his athleticism, I mean, really the sky's the limit with Anthony Richardson because we got such a small sample size at Florida, and what we got was good, not great, but he didn't get a ton of reps. And so a ton of reps in an NFL system might make him out to be a great quarterback. Do I think he's going to be an all-pro, second coming of a early career Cam Newton? I don't think so, but you never know, man. Again, the potential is there because of the athleticism, and the guy is no doubt he has a monster arm.
Yeah. I mean, you can hope that he turns into Cam Newton, but that's best case scenario. You know, Cam was the best college player I've seen in my lifetime.
And what helps him is being able to turn around and hand the ball to Jonathan Taylor. And they've got some decent young receivers, and that's going to help that team a lot.
Yeah. And so, that's 3 teams, 3 of the 3 teams that picked the first 4 picks of the draft. All 3 of them took a quarterback, and all 3 of them will start week 1.
Yep.
You're going to get a good look.
And we did not see a quarterback for a hot minute, which we'll get into that more in a minute. But after that, kind of stayed, true to stock. I thought Devin Witherspoon out of Illinois was a good pick by the Seahawks. That guy's a ball hawk. He's sideline to sideline, a great player. Buddy Lauren Massey had a lot of positive things to say about him, and he's just that next great Seattle DB that's going to step right in and play next year.
I could not tell you the first thing about him.
I asked Lauren.
Yeah. Yeah.
A couple other big picks. We'll kind of round out the top 10 while we're going. Paris Johnson went early to Arizona. Most people had him going like that 10-11 pick, maybe Chicago, maybe Tennessee, but went early to the Cardinals. The guy's an athletic freak, just a monster left tackle, and will be a great player to protect Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray's not going to be able to see over him because Paris Johnson is 6'7", but he can protect him.
Well, you gotta have them knees bent and your waist bent, if you're gonna play offensive line. So hopefully that'll give him at least some able to, Drew Brees tiptoe his way over the line.
That's right. Tyree Wilson, a guy that I was high on last week, went to the Raiders at 7. Just a high motor, high potential guy at Texas Tech.
And of course, the Raiders take the guy with character issues.
Absolutely. Sorry, you took the words right out of my mouth, man.
Yeah. And to me, the team that made the most waves in the draft, and you're getting to them, are the Eagles.
Mm-hmm.
With they got both Georgia linebackers, and so I mean they're just going to be loaded at defense.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And they were already a good defensive team, but you had Jalen Carter and later Nolan Smith, who fell because of that pec injury. But guy is a player, is a 3-down linebacker. He's great in coverage. He can rush the quarterback. Really a solid defender. And now it's just they're calling Philadelphia Athens North because they drafted Jordan Davis last year and then big Jalen Carter this year. And I mean, Philly's doing the right things, picking the best players off the best defense in college football.
I mean, it really doesn't have to be that hard, you know. If everybody is picking college players and Georgia had the best defense in the world. Yeah. And so if you want defense, that's first call I'd make would be to Kirby Smart.
Absolutely. And, speaking of, he's got some character issues. He's got the pending legal trouble with that fatal wreck he was involved with while at Georgia. But if all that goes away or is handled, they got a steal at the 9th pick, man. That is, he fell a long way for the talent that he has, for sure. The one we didn't talk about, probably the biggest splash in the top 10 was the Atlanta Falcons, who had a 1,000-yard rusher last year in Tyler Allgeier out of BYU. Turned around and drafted Bijan Robinson from Texas this year. And the guy's a great running back, but that's early for a running back. And you've already got a 1,000-yard rusher. I feel like you had more needs there, especially with a guy like Jalen Carter and some offensive linemen on the board. That's awful early for a running back.
It's the first time since Saquon Barkley that a running back was taken in the top 10.
Yeah.
And so you see what Saquon is. Saquon's great. Saquon's also missed a year and a half with knee injuries.
Yep.
And so at the 10th pick, then you kind of.
No, this was the 8th pick.
Or the 8th pick. I'm sorry. I was thinking top 10. But with the 8th pick, it's a swing and a miss. I mean, maybe you get prime Saquon or maybe you get injury-plagued Saquon. And for a team, too, the reason why I don't think running backs are typically smart moves at the top of the draft is because teams that are typically at the top of the draft aren't ready to win now. Mm-hmm. And running backs' lifespans in the NFL are so short that by the time you get ready to win, there's a lot of miles on those tires.
Most running backs, the average NFL running back career, I think it's somewhere around like 2.2 or 2.3 years. It's not like it's a long shelf life, and it's.
But even if you're giving him the benefit of the doubt, since he's the 8th pick overall, say he's 5 to 7 years. I mean, Ezekiel Elliott is in his 9th year, and he has been cut.
Yeah, he fell off like 2 years ago and just got cut.
He got cut this year, but he has not been productive for the last 3.
The Derrick Henrys are few and far between that can last and play so well for so long. And, the
Derrick Henry went in the 2nd round.
Right. And all the Titans did was when they should have drafted a receiver, took that kid from Tulane who doesn't have any ACLs. But anyway.
That kid was good in college.
I mean, he was, man. But he's got arthritis already. He's got Todd Gurley written all over him because he's got arthritis already. He's missing ACLs. I mean, maybe it's going to work out, but he's undersized. He's a quick scat back, but cool. When we need receiver help, you're going to take a guy who's going to play, 3rd downs?
Well, I know what I saw in that Rose Bowl game against USC. Was it the Rose Bowl? Maybe it wasn't the Rose Bowl. Cotton Bowl. He was incredible.
Yeah.
Against
USC.
The
talent is there.
Yeah.
It's just injury issues, and that's the last thing we need when we're trying to build. We did great early picking an offensive lineman. We got that kid out of Tennessee, that other offensive lineman that's really good. I got a couple key pieces we needed. Will Levis we'll talk about in a minute. But just when you need so much receiver help, why are you going with a running back there who's likely still going to be there in the next round?
Speaking of questionable running back drafts, the Detroit Lions selected the Alabama running back Jahmyr Gibbs. What pick was that?
12.
So 4 picks after Bijan Robinson was picked by Atlanta, the Detroit Lions traded up to get Jahmyr Gibbs from Alabama, the offseason after DeAndre Swift had a career year.
Who was then promptly dealt to the Philadelphia Eagles.
And then they traded to the Philadelphia Eagles. So the Philadelphia Eagles win again.
Yeah.
But the Philadelphia Eagles got rid of Sanders. He's now playing elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And so that backfield was what's the cat? Boston
Jamal
Scott.
Williams.
Yeah. Yeah, Boston Scott. Jamal Williams is a Saint.
Sorry, I was thinking of Phil. I thought we were talking about Detroit. Sorry, Philly.
Yeah. Yeah, so they've got Boston Scott and then just traded for a
workhorse, DeAndre Swift.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a workhorse.
DeAndre Swift. I'm sorry, I can't remember names tonight.
And Miles Sanders is I don't remember where he went, but he's not there anymore.
Carolina, I believe.
That's right. I think it's Carolina.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
but yeah, it was definitely a reach after a couple really solid picks. The Bears took Darnell Wright. I was fired up about the Titans' first-round pick. Peter Skoronski, that kid from Northwestern, can play left tackle, left guard. He's big. He's a mauler.
And you just lost Taylor Lewan.
Yeah, and so we needed that guy. He's your typical Big Ten left tackle who's big, who can move, who's got a high football IQ. He's a tough kid. I was super high on that pick.
Yeah.
Love that pick.
Your boy Emmanuel Forbes got drafted in the top 15.
Oh, DBU is Starkville, Mississippi, baby.
Oh, my God.
Not going that far. Not going that far. But that is the 5th consecutive year that a Mississippi State Bulldog has been taken in the first round. No other university in the state can claim that. But anyway.
Out of the 2 other universities.
None of those universities, those other 2 universities combined, have had 0 first-round picks in that same time span.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Hey.
But listen, it's a great situation for Emmanuel Forbes. Guy is a ball hawk. He's skinny as a rail. $160 is probably very favorable. He probably had a pocket full of nickels when they weighed him, but guy can play. I mean, the ball skills are there. They got a great pick there. I think that was a home run. He went a little bit higher than people were saying. People were projecting him to Pittsburgh around pick 19, so he went a little bit earlier. But Ron Rivera and that team up there got a player. I mean, yeah. Emmanuel Forbes can flat play. Real quick, before that, did you see what happened with Lucas Van Ness when he got picked by the Packers, what his dad did?
Yeah.
On TV, he got caught in 4K.
He double tapped the girlfriend's hind end.
Gave her
he gave her a good game. That's just encouragement. You know, he was amped up in the moment. I'm sure he would. When your son is drafted in the first round, I'm sure the first thought isn't, let me grab his girlfriend's rear. It's probably, here we go, chest bumping, and she got an accidental good game. You know?
That's it. You got a good ball club. Pap, pap.
Yeah. She got a good game. I mean, this is equality here, America.
That's it. She got her bag, and he was celebrating that for her. But one of my other favorite moments was Quentin Johnson when he was picked. Did you see what he said about his mama?
No.
He said, first of all, this was like an off-stage interview. He said, first of all, I want to thank my mama for all her work she's been putting in and what she's done for me. But she's turning in her 2 weeks notice today because I don't want her working anymore.
Hey, that's a good kid right there.
That's it, man. Take care of mama. She's the one that got you there. You take care of mama. That's for sure.
So, let's work into like just instead of recapping the rest of it. Let's hit the high points. The first round ended and Will Levis was not drafted.
Right.
So with that being said, this is kind of what he fell victim to. A lot of gamesmanship played by front offices.
Right.
The Indianapolis coach used him and abused him.
Yep.
I mean, let's just be real. The Titans had the opportunity to take him at 11. And if they weren't going to take him after the Colts passed on him, then everybody knew he was going to drop. Because you're getting into the good teams here. And good
you
teams
don't need
have
a quarterback.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so he fell out of the first round.
The only other one would have been Seattle a little bit later because they're looking for Geno's replacement, but they didn't take him.
And I think that kind of tells you what a lot of people thought about him.
Yeah.
You know, he was a usable tool. He was one that recruitniks not recruitniks, but draftniks, you know, all the talking heads loved because they love measurables. And they're like, every team looked at him and were like, yeah, we like him, but all these reporters love him. So let's use him. and throw people off the scent. That's exactly what the Colts did.
Yeah.
I mean, they abused him, and it worked.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope you're right. You know, if you're a Colts fan, I hope you got it right. But he fell, and he fell to your guys at the second pick of the second round to your Tennessee Titans. So how do you think this works? How do you like it? And then how do you think they played this hand they've got?
I mean, I'm staying true to color. I don't care for it. I don't think he's going to be this great NFL quarterback. I think, he looks good in shorts and a t-shirt. The arm talent is certainly there, but the talent between his ears sometimes makes me nervous. The decision making is poor. He's a tough kid. There's no doubt about that. Obviously, it tells me that the Titans are done on Malik Willis. That experiment is gone. That ship has sailed. And then what I'm afraid, Drew, is we've got a new GM, and what this does, this ties Will Levis to Mike Vrabel. And if Will Levis doesn't pan out, this was Vrabel's guy, and he'll go down with him if he doesn't work out. I think there's a chance that if Tanny,
I don't know that I necessarily think that by using a second round pick. If I would agree with you if they took him at 11.
But they're staking the future of the offense on him because Taney's 35. He's got bad knee. He's not going to be around forever. He's coming up at the end of his contract, and he'll be a free agent next year. And if he is put into a starting role this season, maybe hopefully at the earliest be next year. Maybe, but I just don't know, man. There's too many questionables for him, particularly when we have such a big need. And there were guys like Jalen Hyatt, Cedric Tillman that were still on the board that we could have taken out of Tennessee to help Treylon Burks and gives him some help on the outside. But instead we trade up to get Will Levis. And I don't love it. I don't get anywhere we got him. I don't hate it as much if we had taken him at 11. I'd have hated it if we taken him at 11. I'd have been pissed. Right. I hate it a little less, but I still don't love it.
So what do you hope they do with him in the 23 season?
Nothing. I hope he sits under Tannehill. He gets some mop-up duty here and there, and they just get him strong, get him used to the NFL speed. You let him play in practice, but I hope that he does not see the field in 2023. We rushed Malik Willis because of injury. We got him on the field a lot sooner, and we saw how that happened. The talent is probably completely different between the two. I just don't want a repeat of that to where he's thrown in too early and we pay for it.
I think I would go the other way with that, especially if you get, you start Tannehill, but you say you start 0-3 or 1-4. I'm going all in on Levis because, and hear me out, because if you're starting at 1-4, you're probably not making the playoffs anyways. The division looks tougher. Not as tough. You've got a clear number one there. Jacksonville's going to be the 1 seed, but so you're a wild card team at best, in my opinion. And so, if you don't really have much of a shot, you go see what Will Levis has got. That's what they did with Malik Willis. They saw enough to know that they don't like him. And if Will Levis goes out there and he starts 8 games, 10 games, and you're just like he's still not putting it together. That means your team sucks, one. And if your team sucks, then you might be in the Caleb Williams sweepstakes at that point. And you can say without doubt that we want another quarterback.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I get that. I do. But, if we're going to let Will Levis be the guy of the future, then, I would love for him to sit and learn. I don't want to throw him in soon. I still going to stand by that. I don't want to throw him in too soon. Too many times these guys are rushed onto the field, and then they lose their confidence. They get the yips, and it's over. And they never get another shot to try and get back.
That's valid. But if you're going to go with that point of view and that thought process about it, then you are admitting that you're going to give Levis the keys in 24.
Yes.
Whether he sucks or not.
And that's where I'm at because we got one more year with Tannehill. And
so you're comfortable with saying we'll let him be on the bench next year and then in the following year, then he could suck or he could be good. We don't really know. And then he may suck and give him anyways.
Maybe give him in the last couple of games of the year. If we're completely out of playoff contention
in the last couple of games of the year.
Say again?
you won't be able to tell anything definitively with the starting 2 games.
Yeah, like I said, if we're at mathematically eliminated, we got 4 games maybe. I don't want to rush it, man. I really don't want to rush it and throw him in too soon.
Okay. Hey, that's your team. I'm cheering for Derek Carr this year, so
Yeah.
and I'm not even mad about it. I could be cheering for Tannehill. So
or Will Levis, who's banana eating, mayonnaise drinking fool.
Yeah. So I want to wrap up on the draft, but there were 2 awesome stories that came out of the draft that I wanted to just mention here. One, Joey Porter Jr. drafted 31st or 32nd overall, first pick of the second round by the Pittsburgh Steelers, where his dad was a legend there, linebacker for the Pittsburgh Steelers. That was great. The second one was watching Deuce Vaughn get drafted by the Cowboys, and he got drafted by his dad, who is the director of college scouting, calling him and asking him if he wanted to go to work with him tomorrow was just the best thing that I saw in the whole draft. I talk about it a lot on this podcast, just in general. Sports is something that I do with my dad. That is my dad's thing that we do together. We go to Ole Miss baseball games together. We went to Omaha together. We did Ole Miss football when we were kids. We've been to St. Louis. And, I mean, my sports fandom is something that I share with my father. And for him as a father and the director of college scouting for the Dallas Cowboys to be able to select his son almost brought tears to my eyes. It was just the best thing that I saw. And it sucked so badly that it was the Dallas Cowboys that did it to me.
I know, but 2 different visceral reactions for me. One, when Joey Porter Jr. and his dad embraced and he said they're looking for a pissed off football player, and Joey Porter Jr. said they got one. I was like, dude, let's go. I was fired up, man.
You know, the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Baltimore Ravens know exactly who they're drafting every year. It's like if you could interview it's only based on the interview.
Yeah.
They've all got that same
that
kind
swagger,
of tenacity
that's
on defense.
It, man. They're just intense, and they knew what they were getting with who his dad was. But like in that moment, I was ready to strap up, go tackle somebody, dude. I was fired up. And then with Deuce Vaughn, you talk about just a warm, fuzzy, who's cutting onions in here, right? Like It's a cool story. Just watching the dad be able to make that phone call and say, "I got somebody who wants to talk to you." Like that was a great line too. Like, you want to come to work with me next week? Like, that was pretty cool.
And for Jerry Jones to get on the phone, and Jerry Jones has got plenty of flaws.
Oh yeah.
But for Jerry Jones to get on the phone and tell Deuce, he said, "We did not draft you because your dad was the director of college scouting. We drafted you because you're good." It was really awesome. It was a father-son moments really choked me up, because
like, who's cutting onions in here?
Because the greatest moment of my life, sans the birth of my daughter and maybe my wedding, it's a kind of a toss-up, is getting to experience Ole Miss winning a national championship in Omaha with my dad.
Sure.
It would not have been the same if it was with buddies.
Yeah.
Like it was me and my dad. The guy who raised me to love Ole Miss and told me my whole childhood he should have raised me an Alabama fan. That we got to experience that, and for them to do that, it's got to just be exponentially better than what I felt.
Absolutely. I mean, just cool moments, and that's why sports, like you said, man, that's why sports are so cool. Is you don't get stories like that in IT. No offense to our IT listeners out there, but like sports it's really cool. Just the way it connects people like that, and just it tugs on your heartstrings. People who aren't even sports fans will see that and it'll be impactful to them as well.
People always, we live in the South. You're from my neck of the woods. And people ask me all the time if I hunt. I'm like, no, that's something that you kind of get from your dad.
That's my dad, and I grew up doing that.
Yeah. I didn't get that from my dad. It wasn't my dad's hobby. Me and my dad's hobby was watching Ole Miss sports, And so Deuce and his dad, I'm sure, they bonded over football practice or watching film. And for them to have that moment,
at the Cowboys facility, because he's been a director of scouting there forever. So props to them. Props to the cool stories and another successful NFL draft. And somebody is now officially on the clock for the Caleb Williams sweepstakes. And so we'll get into a 2024 draft preview when we do our college previews over the summer. Got a lot of cool stuff planned for y'all in that coming up. But tonight is mostly going to be about our beloved Memphis Grizzlies. As already stated on this podcast, it didn't end how we wanted. We both were realistic, but still hopeful that we might end with the parade on Beale Street, but was not in the cards this year. And it ended with a loss Friday night to the Lakers in just a bully beat down, take our lunch money type fashion. And so, Drew, we'll kind of kick it off with that, and then we're going to do something fun a little bit tonight. We're going to kind of give you an example or a parody exit interviews. And for those of you who don't know, players that at the end of the NBA season give an exit interview, talk about their season, talk about what lies ahead, what they're hopeful for. They interview the brass and the coaching staff. So Drew and I are going to give you our take on the players as they ended the season. But Drew, initial first thoughts, anything else to add to what ended our season Friday night at the Crypt?
I mean, not really. It kind of sucks, and we're going to get into it. I feel like me or you one have said we're going to get into it like 17 times already in this podcast, and it's because we're leading up to the Dillon Brooks talk. And so what defined this series, it's a shame that it was defined by off the court stuff.
Yeah.
The Grizzlies ultimately, if I look back at it, this series, losing in 6 to LA, had one thing that was obvious, and it's that without Brandon Clark and without Steven Adams, we did not have the horses. And
that was part of the problem.
We did not have the horses in the right spots. Steven Adams, I mean, we got killed on rebounding. We knew this was going to happen. We talked about this when I said that I wanted Minnesota to win the play-in game because I wanted to play Minnesota and I did not want to play LA.
Yeah.
And for the same reasons, we did not stack up when it mattered most. We could not get the shots to fall for the whole series. We shot terribly as a team. Tyus was terrible. Dillon was terrible. Luke was awesome until he got hurt in the most critical game.
He was terrible for the first couple of games, mostly because he didn't get a lot of minutes, and when he did, he was cold coming off the bench. And then the other thing we missed a lot of, and I hope the front office is really paying attention to this, and we'll get into some of the players we think may fill this need, our wing defense was awful. When I've got a graph I want to go over here in a minute, but like our wing defenders on their offense and defensive net rating are all on that lower quadrant of bad defense, bad offense. We got cooked by Rui Hachimura and Austin Reeves on the wing. It was awful.
Well, I mean, you look at who our front court or who our back court is John Desmond. Mm-hmm. Neither of those should be billed to be plus defenders. They try hard. Especially Dez. He's got moments. Then you got Dillon, and you got Tyus, and 3 of the 4 of those are bad all the time, and Dillon was trash on defense.
Oh, my gosh. He was ever since when LeBron dressed him down on the sideline after some of the comments, it was over at that point. From that on, he took Dillon's manhood on that sideline.
Let's just talk about Dillon. We'll start. We keep referencing it. So, in the actual Grizzlies exit interview that happened on Sunday. On Sunday. Mm-hmm. Dillon Brooks sat down with the front office folks, and, like you said, the exit interview is a lot like a yearly job interview. Mm-hmm. What have you done well? What have you done poorly? How can we address it? And Dillon is going into an offseason where he's an unrestricted free agent, meaning any team, he can go to any team he wants. There's nothing tying Memphis to him and nothing tying him to
do a qualifying offer sheet, no bird rights.
Nothing. He is a total free agent. Mm-hmm. And in that exit interview, it came out that he was wanting $25 million a year. And this is on the heels of him, running his mouth, and it's well documented here that I like a trash talker.
It's not the fact that he ran his mouth so much as it was that he ran his mouth and didn't back it up.
Yeah, and he didn't back it up, and then he left town. And
he ducked the media for 3 straight games.
Made his teammates answer for him. And so he said 2 things in that exit interview. Is one, he wants $25 million, and then in the press conference on his way out, he said that he couldn't get going because the team doesn't draw up enough plays for him.
Yeah, he said they want me to be a 3-and-D guy, and I have more game than that, but you don't.
Yeah. Well, you thought you shot 31% from the field and 24% from 3 on the series. So forgive me if, like, the Grizzlies then told him, but what has become apparent from all the sourcing out here, the Grizzlies told him, like, well, then it's just not going to work for us.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to re-sign you. And so that's when it leaked out on Monday.
Yep.
Or yesterday.
Yesterday morning. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Shams Charania from The Athletic tweeted out yesterday that Dillon Brooks, the Grizzlies were not going to re-sign Dillon Brooks, quote, under any circumstance, end quote. And so that set the internet on fire because I read it and I was like, dang, that's harsh. That's harsh coming from, if the front office said that, that's harsh to go to the media like that. You know, this is just like any other business where you're dealing with people and you've got a locker room full of people who love Dillon.
Yeah.
I mean, they've made no bones about it. They love Dillon.
Yeah.
And
I
then,
mean, you know, he's our guy. Jaws had his back. They said, you know, he can get out there and just defend. Yeah. We'll put up with the shots because he was a plus defender until the playoffs.
So, talking heads, you know how they can be. You know, they're not into the minutia like the fans are or like the local media is. They went on to just trash the Grizzlies after a few days after trashing Dillon Brooks unrelentlessly. It was relentlessly.
It was remnant of Rudy Gay from when Rudy Gay left. We traded Rudy Gay, and all the talking heads were giving us crap because we traded our best player, our best shooter, but they failed to mention that he scored 25, but it was on 20% shooting from the field. And then he goes off, and the first thing he says is he's glad to be out of Memphis. So it feels like that again. It's people who don't know what's going on in the locker room.
But as I digested it yesterday, because my initial thought was, okay, this came from the Grizzlies. That did not come from the Grizzlies. The Grizzlies suffered way too much and they're smarter than that. The front office is smarter than that.
Yeah.
Than to leak out a quote that said, under any circumstance, we will not re-sign Dillon Brooks. Because that hurts the sign and trade option that you could explore with him.
Yep.
And it just hurts how your perception with how you deal with players when you're looking at free agents and stuff like that.
Just like what we saw in the media. That's exactly what happened.
And so I truly believe that did not come from the Grizzlies front office. I think it came from an agent. I think it came from an agent or from Dillon himself or from somebody close to Dillon leaked it to Shams.
Yeah.
However, according to Dillon Brooks' agent came out with a statement just an hour or so ago and said, quote, Shams is the leader of spreading false news and attacking players. Why any player in this league talks to this guy blows my mind. So apparently Dillon Brooks' camp also has a problem with the way the tweet was worded.
I think, because it reflects poorly on both parties. It reflects poorly that either Dillon's camp leaked it or that there was enough issues there that the Grizzlies are washing their hands. Obviously, you nailed it with the Grizzlies, why it looks bad to other teams. I think somewhere in the middle is the truth. There was probably somebody in and around Dillon's camp that leaked that, trying to get sympathy because he went out as a heel. He had Kendrick Perkins pouring honey on him. Everybody was mashing him, was on every sports Twitter and Instagram account as the butt of the joke. And then now what happened? That comes out, they treated Dillon so bad. So it's getting sympathy so he can get $25 million from somebody else, trying to get that contract.
And we all know what the market is for Dillon. Dillon has no self-awareness at all. To go in there and ask for $25 million, and it's documented, they were aggressive at this trade deadline, and he was involved in all trade talks. And they could not get anything done with Dillon Brooks involved in this trade.
Right.
I'm not saying he was the one that brought down all trade possibilities, but to throw him in there was not a piece that a lot of these teams that we were talking about trading for their players, they didn't really want him back.
Right.
And so it just screams of a massive, massive amount of, delusion, honestly. Yeah. And but moving forward, I mean, this is what I wanted, and I think that's what you wanted, and I think that's what most of Grizzlies fans wanted. And I'm not going to be labeled as the guy that is being reactionary based on how he did in the playoffs, because I've been saying this for a long time.
Right.
Dillon Brooks is a regular season player. You've seen what happened when you throw him in a 7-game series.
Yep.
When you see the same team night after night, and they can game plan against you night after night, they took him out of the game. They
100%.
told him to shoot. By the end of that series, or not even by the end of it, by game 3 or game 2, Xavier Tillman was guarding LeBron, not Dillon.
Doing a really good job.
Yeah, Xavier Tillman was guarding LeBron, and Dillon was guarding D'Angelo Russell or Schroeder or Austin
somebody
Reeves.
who wasn't shooting, and that kind of leads into after the series they released the 2022-2023 postseason TPA for the Memphis Grizzlies, and Ja was our most efficient player. He had the most points. Ja was the second most efficient player for us in the playoffs. He had a offensive points added of 20, and he had 8 defensive points saved. But you know who our most efficient player was?
Luke Kennard.
Nope. He was third behind Ja.
Xavier
friggin' Tillman. He had 12 defensive points saved, and he added 6 offensive points. Dillon Brooks, we lost 4 points. He was a -4 defensive points saved, and he was a -21 offensive points scored. So we were 21 points worse, technically a net of 25 points worse when Dillon was on the floor, whereas X was a net of 18, 19. I mean, right. A complete different game with X on the court.
Yeah. This Grizzlies team was regular season deep. Mm-hmm. They did not have what it takes in the postseason. They didn't have enough dogs without Brandon Clark and without Steven Adams. Brandon Clark would have changed the series as a small ball 5.
Yeah.
And so allowed us to go.
And Anthony Davis gets a fraction of those rebounds if Steven Adams is in there.
Right. And so that puts a bow on this season. We all believed after the season was over that we were going to need a wing player.
Yep.
We're going to need an upgrade at the wing.
And to Zach Kleiman's credit, he said that we're going to be aggressive this all season. We saw some things that we need to address, and we're going to go after and be aggressive in the offseason.
One thing that he said, I was like, oh, really? And he said that it's probably not smart to triple down on youth.
On rookies. Yeah, on youth, yeah.
And so that's what we have done. We have banked on the guys that we have drafted. And Zaire Williams did not have a good year this year. He was out of the rotation. LaRavia was non-existent.
Yeah.
David Roddy gave you spurts. And they cut Kennedy Chandler. And so then you didn't get any minutes out of Junior Lofton, and Santi was unplayable in the playoffs as a second-year player. And so what that means to me is that this is going to be, I believe this offseason is going to be an extenuation of the trade deadline, where reports came out after the trade deadline that they were offering 4 first-round picks from Mikal Bridges, and they were offering 6 first-round picks for KD. They were being aggressive and saying, we need to mature now.
Yeah.
And I believe that that's what's going to happen this offseason. You're going to look for free agency, and they're going to look for vets.
I think we've got some great players out there that we'll get to in a minute. But yeah, let's talk about our players. So we've talked about Dillon ad nauseum. He's no longer a Grizz. I think that ship has sailed. We put a nice bow on Dillon. I wish him well. He'll always be a villain. When early in his career, he was good for us. Offensive, he won some games for us, but he just didn't mature at the level he needed to be a consistent contributor.
The last thing I'll say about Dillon is he spent 6 years in Memphis. For 6 years, barring injury, he was a starting small forward for the Grizzlies. Mm-hmm. He was the lone bright spot his rookie year, in which we were terrible and ended up with the 4th pick in Jaren.
Yep.
And the worst record in the NBA. He went out about as poorly as you can.
Yeah.
But when he gets signed to a team and he comes back to Memphis, I hope that Memphis fans give him a round of applause and give him a standing ovation. Yeah. He is a Grizzlies player that I have loved, but the mindset got in his way.
He got in his own way.
Yeah. And it's not a tragic story to me. It's not. I don't hate Dillon Brooks. I hated Dillon Brooks' role on this team.
Yeah.
I think that Dillon Brooks needs a little bit of humbling now. However, if I'm at the game in the FedEx Forum when he returns, I will give him a standing ovation and cheer him on because
I agree.
6 years as a Grizzly, we live and die with these teams. We live and die with these players. Even the bad players are one of ours.
Yeah.
And
he's one of us. I'm a ride or die with one of us. He's also the last of the core four. He was on that team with Mike and Mark and Zebo before they all got traded.
No, he was on there
Mike.
with Mike.
That's right. It was a year after Mark got traded.
I was at Dillon's first game. I was thinking about this the other day. Dillon's first game, the home opener, was Tony Allen's first game back as a member of the New Orleans Pelicans, his first year. And Dillon Brooks went off. And I was like, me and Patrick Jones and Zach, we left that game going to the team store to buy a Dillon Brooks jersey. He had like 18 points in his first game as a Grizzly, and TA returned. I mean, it was a great game.
I remember that now. The year, I was at Mark's last game as a Grizz in Charlotte right before he got traded. They pulled him out in the second quarter, and all the Grizz fans cheered for him. That was the year prior.
So let's get into our our end of season kind of thoughts, our exit interviews for our Grizzlies players, and what we kind of want them to work on or what we want to see for them going into next year.
We'll start with at the top. Drew, I'll cede to you. First one up, Ja Morant.
Well, for Ja, I mean, this was a year from hell for him. Mm-hmm. I mean, and it was all in personal issues. And, I think he got a bad rap. He got lumped in with Dillon when they skipped out on that press conference after Game 3 in L.A. Mm-hmm. And from reports coming out after that and what I've kind of heard is that he skipped that because he was about to go up there and slam the refs and get a $50,000 fine. It had nothing to do with backing up, his smack talk or cowering away. So I'm going to apologize for that a little bit. But for Ja, in his exit interview, his press conference, he owned up to everything. He said, I'll have to live with saying we're fine in the West. I'll have to become a better person. I'm going to have to, he even said that we're going to have to talk more with our actions than our words. And he said all of the right things. Mm-hmm. And when you go through something that he went through this year, it's going to cost him $40 million because he's not going to make All NBA. And from a guy from Sumter, South Carolina, with no college offers, with no stars, he's worked his way to where he's at now with a chip on his shoulder. And he's going to keep a bigger chip on his shoulder now.
Absolutely.
And so for Ja, for me, when you're looking at the offseason, get healthy, one. Stay out of the limelight, keep your nose clean. Become a little bit of a vocal leader, a lead by example guy in the locker room. Solidify your role as the alpha in our locker room, mm-hmm. a role that was there given to by Dillon as the elder statesman. And just be the guy. Be the guy everybody looks to. Be the guy that settles everybody down, keeps everybody in line. Take that role on yourself, and be the guy that we pay you to be. We know you're going to be a great player, and so be the leader now.
So for me, the biggest things for Ja are off the court. You nailed it. I agree. I own up that, and I back off some of my vitriol towards him when he ducked that interview, and I said some stuff that. You're right. I think he was being smart by not taking the fine, and then he stood there and he took his lumps after the season. So props to him for that. Again, get healthy, get in the gym, get strong, and then I don't want to hear from him all summer. Like you said, stay out of the limelight, keep your nose clean, stay out of the news, off TMZ, off ESPN, unless they're interviewing you about your work ethic or your summer camp that you're doing for kids. Go have some fun in Cancun or wherever, but stay humble, stay quiet, and then call Jay Crowder, who everybody knows that's Ja's boy. He loves Jay Crowder. Jay loves Ja. I've seen it on Grizz Twitter multiple times that the Grizz need to sign him for like a end-of-the-bench type veteran leader like a Tayshaun Prince was for us at the end of his career, Vince Carter. I don't hate that. I mean, it's a roster spot we could probably use, but Jay Crowder's a dude when it comes to that locker room. And then also your other phone call needs to be Mike Conley. Not to sign him, but for Ja to learn how to be that steady leader, because that's what Mike was for us for so many years. Again, don't bring Mike back, but if I'm Ja, I'm calling Mike and said, hey, man, I want you to mentor me this summer. I want to lead the team like you did, as that quiet Captain Clutch, so we can go win some ball games.
Oh, see, well, I'm not talking about leading the same way Mike Conley did, because that team was steered by Tony Allen and Zach Randolph. That was the alphas. I need Ja to be the alpha. I need him to be the guy that smacks some folks around and says, "We're doing this way. Get in it. Get on board or get off."
I got some thoughts on being the alpha. We'll get to in some of my players coming up. But yeah, I mean, I agree. He needs to be the guy that no more of that. I'm not the man anymore. I need Ja from like playoff Ja when he scored 40 plus. Like that's the Ja I need, that just takes over a game, dominates, and keeps everybody in line. Absolutely.
Who you got next?
Jaren Jackson Jr. For me, Tripp took a big step forward. There was a lot of growth this year. Obviously, Defensive Player of the Year. I mean, my man showed out with stocks. He's well documented on this podcast. Steals, blocks, altering shots, altering drives without even touching the basketball. He really cleaned up and made waves. And so on the defensive end, offensively, he took some steps forward. I still think there's opportunity for growth on the offensive end for Jaren. I think he needs to get in the gym. He needs to get stronger, and then he needs to be an alpha on offense. He needs to be the one late in games that opens the floor for Ja, steps out where he can shoot those threes, gives some post clearance for Ja. And I hope that Jaren and Ja work on the pick and roll this summer until their shoes fall off, because there's so much potential there with Jaren, with a pick and roll to the basket, as athletic and big as Jaren is, as good as Ja sees the floor when he's driving. Like, we could be one of the best pick and roll teams in the league where it's not taking a huge advantage of it. Steven Adams is vastly better at pick and roll than Jaren Jackson Jr. is, because Jaren doesn't want to set his feet, and he sets those Draymond Green moving screens and gets called for those all the time, instead of standing his ground and then rolling to the basket, which could be a huge thing for us. So for me, Jaren needs to work on being the alpha dude. Our offense should run through Jaren Jackson Jr. As great as Ja is the man in the backcourt, no doubt about that.
In the
we go as
Jaren
Jackson Jr. goes.
In the half-court offense, it needs to run through
Jaren Jackson Jr. He needs to, because he can create the space that Ja needs, and he can take over games for us when we need him to.
Yeah, I agree with you. The problem with the pick and roll thing is if Steven Adams is in the game, there's nowhere to roll to, and that's why they don't use him a lot.
But we had a large sample size without Steven Adams, and they still didn't do it well.
Right. I agree. And then you got Xavier Tillman, which spreads the floor a little bit, but he's not standing in the corner by any means.
Right.
For Jaren, I think you hit the nail on the head, and it's what I would have said if I started it off. Be more aggressive on offense. He averaged 50% shooting from the field on only 13 attempts per game.
Yeah.
Get your shots, young man. Get your shots. Demand to be touched the ball. And get that 3-point percentage up. He's shot about 35.5% this year. If he can get that up to 38%, even, 37, you're talking about 25 point per game scorer.
Yeah, and absolutely. And the potential's there. We've seen it. When Ja was out, all he did was average 25, 28 points a game. Dominated when Ja was out with his suspension. And so
got to learn to do it together.
Jaren has taken a big step this year. Big kudos to him. He really grew up a lot this year, and that makes me excited going into next year, because he made this much growth this year. I think there's still much more to be had as he grows and matures in his role.
And he averaged his only 3.6 fouls per game. And 28 minutes, and he averaged 28 and a half minutes, and that's not because of fouls. That's because of the system that Taylor runs, where they do a lot of subbing. So who you got next?
Next up, Desmond Bane.
This is real simple for me. Desmond Bane has made a huge leap from year 1 to year 2, and then made a huge leap from year 2 to year 3. Mm-hmm. And so just keep doing what you're doing.
That's it.
It's well documented. He is a gym rat.
Mm-hmm. Mostly by his biceps.
He is in every high school gym in Memphis throughout the summer, every summer, every day. And he moves here. He doesn't leave. He stays here. He has said in his post-season interview that he's going to invest a lot of time and effort with the new guys, getting them up to speed. And he has become a leader on this team, and he leads by example when it comes to work ethic. just keep doing what you're doing. I have nothing to say. Get healthy. I don't know if he's going to need surgery on his foot yet or not.
It's
but
looking likely.
Yeah, get healthy first, and
Yeah.
then just keep doing what you're doing.
That's it.
No notes. No notes.
Yeah. He's the quiet leader that we need. I agree. That's the only thing I'll add. He's that quiet leader that we need, and he's the sky's the limit with Desmond Bain. We talked about Dillon. Next up, Big Kiwi. Big Kiwi's big offensive or big off-season thing, again, is getting healthy. Get that knee right, man. Get it figured out. Obviously, we needed him. He is still our anchor in the front court. He is still our big lug who gets down there and mixes it up with the ADs and Joel Embiid, those type players. We need him. Obviously, we stunk without him in the playoffs and got worked by a big-bodied center when we needed him the most. I mean, the guy was an offensive rebound machine. Not going to beat a dead horse because this is a very pro Steven Adams podcast. Steven Adams just needs to get healthy. Keep being the leader. Keep stepping up. He called that players-only closed-door meeting in Denver that Ja obviously didn't listen to, but keep at it, big fella. Keep leading the team and get yourself healthy.
Yeah, that's it. He's going to be on this team for the next few years, and so just get healthy.
That's it. Next up, one guy I think is going to be traded this offseason. I'm curious to see what you think. Tyus Jones.
Yeah, I mean, so we talked about regular season depth, regular season good versus postseason good. I believe now watching, and I don't want to be prisoner of the moment either, because he was good in last postseason, but this postseason he was atrocious. Just no real way to sugarcoat that.
No.
In the one game that Ja was out, he was bad, then. And so, I always considered Tyus as untouchable for a long time, because as much time as Ja has missed in his career, he has been a huge factor in us being able to get the second seed. And I don't think that's giving him too much credit. I believe that's exactly the amount of credit he deserves. He's been incredible when Ja's been out. However, you have a glaring hole on your roster now. You have a wing that has to be upgraded. And whereas I used to shudder at the thought of trading Tyus Jones, I think he's one of the few pieces that you've got that people really want. And so you've got to put him out there on the market to see if you can, if you're going to trade for somebody like OG Anunoby or Cam Johnson or someone like that, that's the piece that you're going to have to give up, because there's 3 or 4 players that are untouchable.
Yeah.
And he's not one of them. And so we're at the point now to where no one is untouchable except for Ja, Desmond Bain, and Jaren Jackson Jr.
Yeah.
If you're talking about getting a 4th star. And in a league that is so wing driven, you've got to have a big 3-and-D wing, more than 3-and-D, just a great player.
A LeBron type player that just can cut, shoot, do it all.
You're not going to get one of those for nothing.
No. And that's why I think one of the other guys we're going to get to in a minute, I think, is another trade commodity that I don't want to see go if he can come back healthy. But you nailed it. Tyus, not going to beat a dead horse. He was awful in the playoffs. He's a very expensive backup point guard. I think that especially in games when Tyus was out or when Ja was out and Tyus was taking a blow, Luke Kennard, Desmond Bain both can run that one when Ja is off the court. They can bring the ball up. They can set the offense. They both did it throughout the year. I'm not saying we don't need Tyus, because, again, Stone's got us some big minutes and got us into that 2 seed, but my man went dormant in the playoffs. And so I think that there are better options out there. And honestly, like the Kennedy Chandlers are a dime a dozen in the NBA draft or in free agency. You can go get a serviceable backup point guard, especially for what he costs us. But, I mean, the guy has great regular season numbers, and so somebody's going to want him. And if it gets us a guy, like you said, like an OG, Spencer Dinwiddie, Cam Johnson, somebody – like a pipe dream with Mikal Bridges, and I would be fine with moving Tyus.
Yeah, and we've gotten to the point with the Grizzlies. We've made the playoffs 2 straight years, 3 straight years. We lost in the play-in 4 years ago. And so I'm done building a roster for the regular season that makes sense.
Yeah.
I need a starting lineup that's great.
Yep. I agree.
When the playoffs get here, you're playing 8, maybe 9 guys, and the 6 through 9 guys are only playing 10 minutes.
Yep.
You've got to have that next guy.
Yeah, and we just don't have that right now.
And Desmond Bain can spell Ja. We've seen it.
That's what I said. Yeah.
I don't know that I would trust Luke Kennard to run the offense, if I'm being honest and being a little bit critical.
Maybe give him another year and he could. He was serviceable some, but I agree. Dez is the one that can run the offense.
He can bring the ball up, but I don't really trust him to execute the offense from a point guard position. I do trust Desmond in that.
Yeah.
So, that's what I got on Tyus.
We've talked about Santi. Big body Roddy had some big minutes down the stretch. I will be the first. I wanted to take this one because I need to own up. I was really hard on David Roddy at the beginning of the year. I was not a fan of his when he was taking his lumps, but over time, the progression got better and better and better. He was making big shots. He was stepping in passing lanes. He was bodying up, defending guys when Dillon was out, and did a great job defending some of the better players in the NBA as a rookie. So props to the Rook. David Roddy, you earned my respect. You played some good minutes, and he didn't play a ton of the playoffs, but when he did play, he played pretty well for a rookie in a big series. I'm excited about the future. David Roddy showed a lot of growth. Get in the gym this offseason with the guys. Play basketball until your legs fall off. Figure it out. Shoot threes. Get aggressive. I own that, and I owe David Roddy apology. I know you're a big fan of this podcast, my man, so props to you for growing.
I would like to take a moment to apologize to absolutely nobody because unlike my co-host here that has no foresight at all, I saw it with Roddy. He had it, and I was on it from the beginning. I loved him. I loved how hard he played. Even though he didn't get the minutes, he played hard. His shot didn't look terrible. He's a rookie, and I knew he'd come back around. And my boy made me look smart, a lot smarter than Rusty, which we all knew anyways.
Sure.
And so one of us is a doctor, and the other one is me, and I'm the smartest.
He got lucky with David Roddy, but Roddy got some big minutes. I'll say that. Big props to him for growing into a ball player. Xavier Tillman, we already talked about the big playoff minutes. My man's 24, looking 44, but can just step up and play clutch minutes. I cannot emphasize how much more I love X after the playoffs. Just he had that big game where he had the double-double. He defended freaking LeBron James. He got big rebounds when they were needed. This was already a very pro Xavier Tillman podcast.
I was a pro Xavier Tillman podcast.
I was a big Xavier Tillman fan going into the playoffs. I want that man a Grizzly forever.
I'm in 100% agreement. This podcast has talked honestly probably way too much about how much we love the 10th man on the roster being Xavier Tillman. But when his number's called, you can count on Xavier Tillman. You put up the bat signal, and Xavier Tillman is going to give you everything he's got.
Yeah.
And I'm with you, man. And what was encouraging to me is he had a big series, whereas Dillon Brooks lost a lot of money this playoffs. Xavier Tillman could have made him a lot of money this playoffs. And I was encouraged to hear that Zach Kleiman singled him out as being a major factor in this team going forward.
Yep.
And if nothing else, Xavier Tillman is that guy, can be that guy, that Udonis Haslem light.
Role
that
player,
glue guy, the ultimate teammate that nobody can say anything to him or about him because you cannot find any dirt on Xavier Tillman. You will not find a single minute of practice or game or grocery shopping that he's not giving 100%.
Yeah.
And that is the guy that I look for when I hire folks at my job. That's the guy that I want to be friends with. That's the guy who I want to depend on, is a guy like Xavier Tillman.
Yeah.
And Zach Kleiman was effusive in his praise and looked for roles in the future for him. He will be a member of the Memphis Grizzlies.
He said he's going to be a big part of our future, and I couldn't agree more. There's going to be some guys that knock on the door for a trade, but he's not one of the untouchable four, but I would put him up there.
No, he may be one they throw in as a sweetener,
Yeah, but
as a not nothing,
But I'll say this, not to wrap up X too soon because we do talk about him a lot, but I think the man in the front court that's going to get traded, if he can get healthy, Brandon Clark brings you a lot of value on the trade market, and that hurts my heart to say. I love BC. He's got some of the best bounce in the league, just always on his toes, high energy type player. But he had a catastrophic Achilles injury. And for a guy like that, that's a tough thing to overcome. I know the Grizz have said he's ahead of schedule. I'd say that too. I hope that that's true. I hope that he comes back as a Memphis Grizzly. I really do. But he's a piece that could really fetch something in the open market. I don't want him gone, but I see that making sense. Because who else are we going to trade? You're not going to get a guy like OG or Spencer Dinwiddie or some of these guys for a John Conchar and Santi Aldama. You're not going to get a guy like that.
So you're right about Brandon Clark. He is a piece. The problem with Brandon Clark is that you're kind of trading for an unknown because he is a guy who's known for his athleticism and bounce, but he's coming off an Achilles tear.
Yeah.
They did say he was ahead of schedule, but they said that doesn't mean he will. They hope to have him back next year.
Yeah, they're hoping
season opener, but next year.
It's going to be 2024 before BC sees any measurable minutes. It'll be after the turn of the calendar year, and that's a crowded front court because Kleiman's also on the record of saying that Kenny Lofton Jr. is going to have a lot of minutes going forward, and that gets crowded real quick when you've got 5 guys down there playing for 2 spots when we need so much wing help.
Right, and I think we've learned that depth is not overrated in general, but it is overrated in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Especially now, Brandon Clark is not anywhere close to losing playoff minutes if he's healthy.
No. He'll be the 6th man. He'll be the first one off the bench.
Right.
Absolutely. We missed that this playoff season because who was our first guy off the bench more often than not? Santi freaking Aldama.
Yeah. So you want to who you got next?
See him up next. Santi Aldama.
Okay. He's just gonna have to get in the weight room. I mean
yeah. They're figure out how to shoot.
You're talking about regular season good. That's Santi Aldama. He struggled mightily in the playoffs again. He's just such a negative defensively now. And it's because he plays the 4, but he can't rebound and he can't guard the 4s. And so he's kind of
picks. He gets picked off real easily. He doesn't know what to do in space. He gets cooked.
And he's got a pretty shot, and offensively he's not bad. But he's a net negative on defense, and so he's got to get in the weight room.
Well, he said he's going to eat 6 or 7 meals a day this off season, and I hope he does because he's going to need every bit of it.
And I hope he doesn't get off the couch.
Yeah.
if it's unhealthy 60 pounds, he needs the 60 pounds.
I mean, that's it, man. I mean, the only person skinnier on this planet is Emmanuel Forbes, who we talked about earlier. Yeah. So I agree. But, yeah, that's Santi. Luke Kennard is an interesting one going into the offseason because Luke had a monster regular season, and then my man was the most wanted man in Memphis because he went dormant. Not necessarily of his own fault.
Don't even put that on him.
I'm getting there. Now, and I'll get your thoughts on our coach in a little bit. But I think a lot of that was scheming, lineups, and rotation. Because when Luke was in there, he was a bucket. What was that? He finally got minutes, and was that game 4? And then he busts his shoulder up, and it's like.
And you forget that in that game, he only went 2 for 3 or 2 for 4 from 3.
Those big buckets.
But it's the fact that he was standing there.
Yeah. No, I agree 100%.
And that's still 50%. He needs to be taking
Taylor
8
Jenkins.
a game.
That ain't on Luke Kennard. That's on Taylor Jenkins 100%.
So he is on an expiring deal going in. So next year will be the last year of his deal. Mm-hmm. I hope that they extend him. Yeah. Because he's the shooter that you need with a guy like Ja. We've talked about this. I don't want to do it again. Yeah. He's a priority for me. Not the number one priority. Number one priority is getting a superstar wing.
Yeah.
But
get him on a team-friendly deal. Let's extend him. Let's make him stick around. You know, a deal like we got Jaren on that's team-friendly, but one that keeps him in Memphis and keeps that threat on our bench.
Right. So, bring him back. Luke, you know, if you want to work on anything,
backup point guard, learn how to run the offense.
Yeah. I don't know. Just keep. What I want you to focus on is getting a little bit of an ego, and go watch some of your old tape. Of you just shooting fireballs,
Yes.
and then
learn how
shoot
to
the ball more.
and learn how to come across a pick. Learn how to play just a little defense, not a lot, just a little defense, just a little.
Yeah, you're being critical. Shoot the ball, Luke.
Hey, you said we said we want him back. I had to find something for him to get better at. Let's play defense. Speaking of another bust, I think the Zaire Williams experience in Memphis is, if it's not over, it's halfway out the door.
I don't think it's over because his value really took a hit.
He's gonna be a Memphis hustle. He's gonna be on the G League next year.
He's a 6'9" wing that has the body to defend and the shot that looks good. And so I'm kind of hoping that he just puts it together. I don't know that he's going to be one that they throw away just in a trade.
No, but I think somebody's going to look at him as a developmental piece and think maybe Memphis isn't developing well, and maybe we could get some return on him. But again, like, he showed moments in his rookie year. Maybe it's just a sophomore slump. Hope he comes back, because he has the look of an NBA player. The production just wasn't there.
I think he'll have a really good third year. Brandon Clark had a really bad second year too, if you remember.
True. I do. Yeah, that's fair.
People, your first year in the league is the only time as a player you do not have a scouting report against you.
Yep.
Year 2, you do, and he hit his slumps and he hit them hard.
Yep.
I think he bounces back next year. I'm not saying he's going to be a starter in the playoffs like he was last year.
Yeah.
But I think he'll be good.
Yeah. And we'll wrap up real quick on Kenny Lofton Jr. Obviously, he's a part of our plan going forward. Front office loves him. I love him. Guy got 40-something, 42 in the last game of the regular season against the Thunder.
That, yeah.
That's incredible, man.
Yeah. For Kenny, learn how to play a little bit of defense.
Mm-hmm.
The ball tends to stop with him on offense, and so learn to kind of facilitate a little bit out of the high post would be nice.
Don't be Dillon Brooks.
Because I think he's going to spell Steven Adams a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And, learn how to facilitate. Get with Steven. Let him show you how to set a hard screen.
Go back and watch film of Zebo.
Yeah. And so, again, I don't think he's going to get heavy minutes next year, but it is somebody that Zach Kleiman, again, said was going to be a part of this franchise going forward and that he was excited about.
Same with Jake LaRavia. That's another name that Kleiman really likes. And there's a lot of people on Grizz Twitter. Anthony Sane is one of them that thinks Jake LaRavia takes a big step next year, get some minutes, get some points. We'll see. Jury's still out.
I haven't seen anything.
That's it. I haven't seen enough to know.
He's the first rookie that's been drafted by this Grizzlies front office that had no leash at all. Yeah. And he dealt with a lot of nagging injuries, wrist and, wear and tear kind of stuff that maybe his body just wasn't ready for this yet.
Yeah.
And so a year in the gym may do him wonders. They haven't missed on a draft pick yet. Just flat out missed.
No, but they haven't hit on a few.
I guess we're talking semantics and a little bit of point of view on those. To me, they haven't missed because you don't have anything invested in them.
You can't look at Zaire, Santi, and Jake and say that they hit on them. They haven't. The jury's out. They hadn't missed yet, but they're not trending in a good direction.
Well, I'll put it. We'll just take those one at a time then. Zaire, you spent at the number 10 pick. You traded Jonas Valanciunas and the 17 pick for what ended up being Zaire Williams and Steven Adams. And so after his rookie year, I was thinking that Zaire Williams would go into that offseason and forward as the fourth piece they were looking for and look out league because we've got 4 guys.
Yep.
I'm not going to change drastically and do a complete 180 on Zaire Williams based on this year for reasons I told you a minute ago.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that it's a hit. I'm saying it's TBD.
I'm going to need to see a lot pretty early next year. He's going to do something this summer.
As far as, Lofton and Kennedy Chandler and Jake LaRavia, LaRavia was the 10th, 11th pick, something like that. Mm-hmm. So maybe that's a miss. We'll see. For Lofton and those second-round picks, if you get any production out of a second-round pick,
that's a win.
It's not.
I'll give you that.
Yeah.
I'll give you that. I just you see so much. This front office never misses, and there's been a few that just haven't quite panned down yet. Not saying that they won't.
I think you've got hits, and I think you've got TBD though. I don't think you have an absolute miss yet. except for if you want to call Kennedy Chandler, but he was a roster casualty because you lost Steven Adams for the playoffs.
Yeah. And then the last one, and we'll be brief here before we go into trade targets. Jitty, John Conchar, monster block against AD, but I mean, he's a role player at best. Maybe he's trade fodder. Maybe he sticks around. Either way,
he needs to be a 42% 3-point shooter.
Well, he said that he could be a 40% three. He needs to be at least 40% from three in his exit interview. So
yeah,
confidence is there.
I love Jitty. Right. He does a little bit of everything. He just needs to be really good at one thing.
And he'll forever be etched in my mind blocking AD on that dunk.
Right.
I mean, holy cow.
Absolutely.
So we talked a lot about trade targets. We talked about OG Anunoby. We've talked about Spencer Dinwiddie. We've talked about maybe Gary Trent Jr. Any other trade targets you want to talk about? Because I do have a few free agents we could talk about.
Yeah, I think if you could go get Cam Johnson, you get Cam Johnson. I think Mikal Bridges played too well.
Yeah.
I don't think Brooklyn's going to trade him now. He's become untradeable.
They're going to build around him.
Yeah. The lottery was if you could swing something for Jaylen Brown.
Yeah, I mean
because there's no
that's the pipe dream.
Yeah. Like you said, you mentioned earlier that you're not going to be able to trade anybody without, trading a big piece to get anybody big. But what you didn't mention is that we've got every first round pick that we own.
That's the thing. Yeah.
And so if you could wrap in like a 3-team trade, and give some bum team that is rebuilding like Portland, a bunch of picks, and Portland can send, say, like Jeremy Grant.
That's my number one.
No,
he's a free agent.
Wait. Send Jeremy Grant and somebody to Boston, and then we can get Jaylen Brown.
Yeah.
That way, you're getting off of picks more than players, because they've said they're not really. They're thinking about. It doesn't make a lot of sense to triple down on youth. I keep coming back to that.
Yeah.
I believe that statement factors in with their current draft picks as well. I'd be shocked if we have a first-round pick in the 2023 NBA draft.
You're absolutely right. And Jeremy Grant he's number one on my free agent because he's a free agent. And so it'd have to be a sign and trade with Portland. Are they interested in that? That's if they're blowing it up. And they may not blow it up. They may still try and give Dame one more last run. But Jeremy Grant is at the top of my list. A couple other guys that I'm thinking about in free agents that make sense, that are hopeful, probably pipe dreams, are a Harrison Barnes. He's a free agent going to the offseason. Makes a lot of sense.
I'm thinking way higher class than Harrison Barnes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking like realistic here. Like Harrison Barnes might be somebody we can get. Kyle Kuzma. I saw Mason Plumlee's name come up to help down low.
Put me to sleep, please.
But if we're talking pipe dream, dude, go get Jaylen Brown. Go get, I want DeMar DeRozan. I've been saying that since the trade deadline. I want DeMar DeRozan because the guy's a scorer, and he can still defend well, he plays well, and he brings that veteran leadership that you desperately need in that locker room.
So Jeremy Grant, in his one season in Portland, played in 63 games, started in all 63 of them, averaged 38 minutes a game. He averaged, 20.5 points per game on 2-point percentage of 52% and 3-point percentage of 40%.
Yeah.
He is a big wing. He is 6'8", 210. He fits the mold of what I would want to have at the wing. I get that.
Him or OG, either one, because OG was 38.7, so they're both in that same neighborhood as a 3-point shooter.
My problem with Jeremy Grant goes back a few years. If you remember, he was in Denver, and he left Denver because he wanted a bigger role on the team. And so they shipped him to Detroit. And he would have rather played at Detroit for a bigger role than play for a winning team. And so he went and played loser basketball with Detroit. And then he went to Portland and played loser basketball this year. Not that he played like a loser.
Yeah.
But he was on a contender and left for a bigger role. So if you're coming to the Grizzlies and you're thinking that you're going to be the guy or the second guy, then you're wrong.
Yeah.
Not Jeremy Grant. Jaylen Brown? Okay.
Yeah.
Not Jeremy Grant.
Jaylen Brown quickly moves at the pecking order, and there is a lot of talk, especially if Boston gets ran early, that he might be one that they shop around to try and build around Jason Tatum with maybe somebody else through the draft. They get some first round picks. Who knows? But obviously Jaylen Brown, DeMar DeRozan are those pipe dreams. Jeremy Grant might be somebody more realistic that we could get along with the previously mentioned OG Anunoby.
Right. OG is someone that keeps flying around, and I'm not going to say it's I just can't speak knowledgeably. I'll look up his stats. I know you're a big OG fan, so won't you?
I am, but at the same time, like I'll say this, I think it's a good pickup. I think it improves us at the wing, but I don't think that it's a statistically significant. Is he better than Dillon Brooks? Absolutely. Is he going to be a better culture guy than Dillon Brooks? Outside of the off-court antics, I don't know. I think he would be an upgrade, but I don't know that he's the upgrade we need for what he's going to cost. He'll be cheaper now. Toronto had a ton of calls about it at the trade deadline. They're obviously going to want to move him in the offseason. It'll obviously be at a cheaper price, and so I like that better. I didn't like it for what we were going to have to give up for him at the trade deadline, but does it light my world on fire? No. Is there better out there? I think we could get better, but I think OG would be a solid pickup.
So OG Anunoby averaged 16.8 points per game in 67 games. He shot from the field 47.6% and from three, 38.7%. The thing with OG is that he's younger too. He will be 26 to start the next season, whereas Jeremy Grant will be 29. OG fits the timeline of Ja and Jaren and Bane a lot better. Kind of fits in seamlessly, if we're being honest.
Yeah.
And so that's cool. I mean, I could be excited about that. He only averaged 13 field goal attempts per game. Mm-hmm. So it's really what you're wanting. Jeremy Grant's going to be a little bit more of a high volume shooter. Jeremy Grant this year averaged how many field goal attempts per game? 15. So 3 more shots.
Yeah.
Or 2 more shots per game.
2 more shots.
If you're looking for more role player, so you mentioned a lot of names too. My point of view on going to get players is you make everybody tell you no first. You go make Boston tell you no, for Jaylen Brown. And then you get to guys like you had mentioned with Spencer Dinwiddie doesn't do anything for me, if I'm being honest.
He's a 3-and-D guy.
Yeah. He's a good character, a locker room guy. On that team, I'd rather have Cam Johnson than anybody, not named Mikal Bridges.
Yeah.
Bobby Portis, I would love Bobby Portis.
Yeah.
He was a 6th man of the year candidate at Milwaukee, a prototypical 4, shot over 40% from 3. Had a really awesome season from Arkansas. And so that's who I would look at.
What about Kyle Kuzma?
Kuzma kind of fits in that same thing. Kuzma's more of a wing, I guess, more of a 3 than a 4. As Bobby Portis is a 4.
Kuzma was 33 from 3, 45 from the field. Averaged 21 points a game, 7 rebounds. I mean, he can get some buckets.
So Bobby Portis he'll be 28. He's a little bit older. He started in only 22 of the games. That's why he was up for 6th man of the year. Took 11.5 shots per game, shot basically 50% from the field and 37% from 3. Averaged 14 points a game. How's his rebounding? Total rebounds. So he averaged 14 and 10 off the bench.
Yeah.
So that could also help with minutes in which Jaren's on the bench.
Right.
Or Steve-O's on the bench. You could go small with Portis, kind of like you could go small where we went small with Xavier Tillman out of necessity. Bobby Portis is better.
Yeah. Another name, Dorian Finney-Smith, not a bad pickup. I mean, DFS is a solid role player.
Yeah, I mean, he is what he is. Dorian Finney-Smith is not going to light the world on fire. If you're going to go that way, maybe Tim Hardaway Jr. is on the board as well. It's just a sharpshooter, a Grizzlies killer. those are a lot of options. And honestly, if we're being brutally honest and not a prisoner of the moment, any of them are better than Dillon Brooks. And that's why everybody was like, well, who are you going to get that's better than Dillon? There's a lot of options that are better than Dillon.
I agree. I agree. But yeah, any other thoughts about the Grizz? Actually, yeah. Taylor Jenkins, man. We're both Taylor Jenkins fans. I'm going to preface that. Had a phenomenal regular season. Was a Coach of the Year candidate, or at least should have been. Won 51 games, second seed in the East. Didn't love some of his playoff decisions. I'm not going to lie.
Well, we've kind of touched on this a little bit too. Sure, there are things that you can do better, but you've got to play with the hand you're dealt.
Mm-hmm.
And this series did not go in our favor when it comes to our depth. You know, our team is meant to spread you out and drive and kick, but you didn't have your best post player. They were sagging off of Dillon, and you couldn't replace him with anybody. I mean, it just didn't go our way. He did take a major shot today. I don't know if you saw the Steve Kerr quote about how he was based on how the Lakers' first round opponent went. Is there anything that he would do differently? And he said, well, I probably wouldn't spend the first 5 minutes driving down to the lane and into Anthony Davis. And so that hurt a little bit. But that's kind of the scheme. Like that's the thing that Dillon Brooks killed so much, is that those guys were able to stand in the paint. Like, sure.
Okay, well, make an adjustment. Make an adjustment. Like that, you're paid as the NBA head coach to make an adjustment. It's clearly not working. Make an adjustment. Like, you can say that that's on the players all you want. Call a timeout. Call something different. Make an adjustment. That was my thing.
They missed open shots the whole time. If I'm critical about one thing, that I think you're right about, is the adjustment to go to Kennard was done too late.
Yes.
But that was the adjustment, and he made it
in game 4.
That's the critical. That's the part that again, I'm with you about.
I'm a fan. I'm very pro Taylor Jenkins. He should be our coach for the foreseeable future. I'm not trying to get him fired, but he has to have a quicker trigger when it comes to rotations, player substitutions, or just a feel for the game. Many times, because you can pin it. You can pin it on the players all you want for those slow starts, but you got to make some adjustments to maybe get them out of that funk. That's partially on the players for partying and laying out too much and not showing up ready to go to work. Part of that's on the coach not making adjustments when you recognize your guys are flat.
I think that we had open shots every game. We missed them every game.
Yeah.
And yes, we got more open shots when Luke Kennard was in the game, and he should have went to him earlier. I'm with you. But you got to remember Taylor Jenkins comes from. He's from the Popovich tree.
Sure.
Popovich didn't change for nobody. They ran their offense, and they ran it better than you could run a defense against them. And I just don't know that he's ever dealt with it before. That his scheme did not work. Yeah. I believe his scheme didn't work because his players weren't there, and the scheme may have worked, but the players didn't make shots. So both. But then he did make the proper change. It was just a little too late, and then Luke got hurt.
Yeah.
So and Taylor Jenkins did say that they are going to work, and Josh said it as well, that they were going to work on having more iterations or more wrinkles or more diversity in their offense.
Yeah, because forward. Like we said, like the drive that's our bread and butter. That's all we do. And having a guy like Luke Kennard changes a lot of things. You just got to get more creative. So,
right. So that's all I've got on the Grizzlies.
Yeah. We're an hour and a half in. You know, I know a lot of our listeners, if you're still here, man, God bless you, because we have been yammering on about the Grizzlies for an hour and a half now. Thank you for sticking with us. I know you want to talk about it. We'll briefly touch on college baseball real quick.
Well, I mean, there's really only one thing that needs to be said. Two things. Really. Two things. Yeah. Ole Miss won a series against Georgia. They walked off on Sunday to win their first SEC series of the year to get us to, I believe it's 6-15. And also Mississippi State got swept by Tennessee. So that's all we had. That's it for the podcast today, guys. Thanks for listening.
But that sweep from Tennessee did lead to a change that I thought needed to happen in the offseason. I'm a fan of it happening anytime at this point. Our season's over. We're not making the postseason. Scott Foxhall, your pitching coach at Mississippi State, was let go after just another pitching debacle. I mean, we scored 8, 10, and 11 runs and still lost ball games to Tennessee. Most years, that's going to win you a lot of games, even in the SEC. But when your ERA is hovering around 7 as a team, when you've already got 62 hit batters this year and you got more walks and strikeouts, like something had to give. I'm not in the camp to fire Chris Lemonis yet. You fire the head coach, and there's still this massive risk that we're going to have a ton of transfers anyway, transfers out. But if you fire Chris Lemonis, you can almost guarantee guys like Dakota Jordan and Hunter Hines, even Durangelo may snip the transfer portal. This might keep them a little bit longer, but last thing I'll say, thank you for your service, Scott Foxhall. It was time for a split, and we're going to have to hit the transfer portal hard to get a Friday night guy that we can count on because we don't have that.
Yeah, you can't win in the SEC without a solid starter. It's Ole Miss's problem this year too. Xavier Rivas has done really good. He's at Friday nights now, and Grayson Sonia, who got demoted to midweek, had an incredible game on Sunday in a winner-take-all. Game 3 against Georgia. He was incredible. And so Chris Lemonis, you get to fire your assistants once.
Yep.
And it was justified. I mean, you can't look at that team and see their batting numbers versus their pitching numbers and not fire the guy.
Yeah.
The timing's weird. I mean, obviously you fired him once you're no longer in postseason contention, but if you thought you could salvage it by firing him, you should have fired him a long time ago. And so to solidify your being at home during the postseason, and then firing your coach seems a little backwards to me. But we
weren't going to win we weren't going to make the playoffs with or without him. I mean, like at this point, we weren't going to make the tournament.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But after the Ole Miss series, when you kind of have a faint heartbeat, if you think that firing the pitching coach might help this season, do it then. Yeah. But instead, they waited until the nail was in the coffin,
Yeah, just maybe scrapping it and trying again.
And all I got to say is, don't let the Rebs get hot.
Jeez, yeah. So y'all can finish.
If we go 12-0, we're in the tournament. Yeah. And so all we've got to do is sweep Alabama, Auburn, Missouri, and A&M. No, we've already played A&M. Do we have 4 series left? Or we just got 3.
No, we got 3.
3. Okay, Alabama, Auburn, and Missouri. 9-0 gets you to 15-15.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, this is the reason why I held on for so long. The back
Don't
half
get
of
your
the
hopes up,
schedule
man.
Stinks.
I got my hopes up and got crushed. So don't get your hopes up.
Yeah, I'm not. The Cardinals are playing against a pitching matchup. The Cardinals started Miles Michaelis. The Los Angeles Angels started Shohei Ohtani, and the Cardinals are winning. So
yeah, of course. That's usually how that goes. Cubs are down 2-1 to the Nationals.
Yeah. So.
All right, that's all I got for the podcast tonight. Got anything else you want to add, sir?
I don't have anything, except for the fact that if Mississippi State needs a head ball coach, they will not be able to afford me. I'm coaching my boys team and my girls team this year, and we are combined 4-0. So sorry, Mississippi State, but I'm gonna have to just fill out other offers.
Get it.
So.
All right, well, that's it, man. Looking forward to next week. We'll come back at y'all next week, same time. A lot of hot topics. The NBA season is over, so we'll talk more baseball. We'll talk some more off-season things we'd like to see. We'll obviously talk about the NBA playoffs, even though the Grizzlies are no longer in it, and just keep you updated on all your sports news. Uncle Buck, tell them where to find us.
Yeah, so you can find us on Facebook at the 2 Buck Sports Podcast fan page. We're on Twitter and Instagram at the number 2 Buck Sports Podcast, and on YouTube at 2 Buck Sports Podcast. Also, just keep listening on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, on Google Play, wherever you find us. I will shout out our good buddy Nick, Aaron Ivy's wife Nikki did comment on her Facebook post asking us how we would react. I put out a poll just kind of asking for questions, and she did respond with, "What do we make of the Dillon Brooks saga after, and we have discussed that. And so we only discussed that, Nikki, because you asked us to.
100%.
So there you go. Don't say we don't listen.
That's it. All right, guys. See y'all back next week. Uncle Buck enjoyed it as always. Y'all be good. We'll see you here next week.
All right. See you, man. Bye.